Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting insight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And we're hoping that the hamsters of Ohio can keep turning that wheel so Dan's internet works better.
You know what? It's probably the RCMP just a few miles north of me that realizes that we're promoting freedom for the Ottawa truckers today. And so they're trying to choke back my internet. I like that. Which, by the way, did you see about the guy who shut off North Korea's internet? Did you know about this? This happened like last week. This dude realized, and I mean, he's just some like basement nerd, right? And I guess I'd have to pull up the story. It was on Not the Bee, like yesterday or today. He was following. He was being traced and trying. I guess North Korea was trying to hack him, and he's like, "All right, well, screw you." And so he found a few, openings. He's like, yeah, they're running what's basically really old Linux system. And he's explaining all this stuff. And he's like, so anyway, I'm not going to tell you all the vulnerabilities and help them, but I found the vulnerabilities. I ran a program. We attacked it. We essentially took down all the major internet for the government. Like, I don't think the entire internet was out, but like, I mean, Kim Jong-un's website was down. Like, I mean, he hacked North Korea and it was beautiful. And just one guy, man, hero of the day.
One guy can make a difference. Kind of reminds me of the intro to Knight Rider, if you guys remember that back in the day.
We need some of those old heroes back, man. I was saying before we jumped on here that, like, what would Dudley do right in doing the situation in Ottawa?
I know.
It's like Snidely Whiplash is in charge now. Yeah.
So I'm going to kill my video, see if that helps out the internet connection. You might want to do the same.
I'll do the same thing. Let's see
if that makes it easier on the old Zoom. But yeah, no, I mean, what you were talking about with Ottawa, here's what I wanted to bring up about that. First of all, there's so many different things about that. And I know the direction you want to go with that. But let me just say this. I was talking to my wife last night. I think one of the reasons why we're seeing this stuff in the rest of the world, where freedom, like, people are taking a stand for freedom, and we're not seeing it here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my personal belief is this: in a situation like Canada, where basically their government, their federal government, is saying, this is the way it is, everyone has to get in line, there's no outlet for freedom. Mm-hmm. Here in the United States, there are enough red states that are like, no, we're not doing this. And so we're just seeing people migrate to those states and going, okay, we're moving there. Because let's face it, this thing is very, very political. Yeah. And the blue side of the track, like here in California, they would not feel comfortable if everything was open. If you weren't mandating vaccines, like, they would be up in arms saying, no, you have to mandate my neighbor get a vaccine because I'm scared. Mm-hmm. And I literally think it's because of the system that we've got, where the states have a level of sovereignty. I'm not going to say they're sovereign states, because it's just not, it's not. But my point is like, there's enough of that where the states and the bulk of the people, like in Texas and in Florida, they would be revolting. They would be protesting if Biden had the power to just push it down on everybody. This is what I want done, and you have to deal with it.
Yep. I think your estimation is exactly correct. It's like we don't have that immediate catalyst because there's still freedom outlets. And when it's what we're seeing it a little bit in people moving from one state to another. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them don't get why the state that they're in is causing them so much problem, and so they still vote the same way.
I don't think that's the people who are migrating because of this. They absolutely know. Like, they're not migrating and going, hey, I'm still going to vote blue over here. And like, that's not what's happening. The people who migrate and vote blue in red states are people who are moving because their job moved. Tesla moved from California to Texas.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to go stay with my job. I'm still who I am. It's not freedom that I'm leaving. It's my job, right? Toyota moved to Dallas area, and everyone moved. Like, we had friends who moved with Toyota from California. Those people are still going to be voting the same because it wasn't freedom they were seeking. It was their job. They were just staying with their job.
Yeah. I think you got a good point on that, which I'm assuming then what's happening is you have like a Tesla moving because there's better economic freedom there, tax benefits are better, and then they're pulling their entire talent staff or a big, large pool of it with them, and they don't necessarily get it. I follow that. I can see that happening. Yeah. So what a time though, man. It's
it's a crazy time. I mean, the mayor of Ottawa declares an emergency because the protest has gone on for 10 days. The police there in Ottawa are taking license plates number so they can do criminal prosecutions after. Like, the protest has not gone on long enough to where the government officials understand the people are done with their crap.
Yeah.
Right. Right now, the government's just going, well, we can't do anything about it because there's too many of you, but we're just going to wait you out. And I'm telling you, those protesters, they got to stick with it. They got to keep going until they break the back of their government, literally break their backs.
Yeah. Well, we're moving. This is an interesting thing. If you're watching, because a key thing for these truckers is they've got to have fuel to keep the trucks heated, right? Because a lot of people, they're essentially camping out in their trucks in many cases. Then you have other protesters going in. It's really a beautiful thing. But some important things happening. One is there's radical misinformation. You know, the truckers have actually left a line open so that EMT and things like that can get by. And, but of course the government's saying like, well, we can't get emergency services through. And so people are dying, and we know that's not happening. We also have this situation where like people are bringing in fuel and food. The RCMP has tried to block food from getting through, has tried to block water from getting through. And as of yesterday, they were actually confiscating fuel. And so we have some instances of fuel confiscation. There are some eyewitnesses, and there's not enough to corroborate yet. Some eyewitnesses are saying that like people are just kind of getting disappeared. People are just kind of, there was a family that just supposedly just got pulled off, thrown in the back of a wagon and taken away. And they're like, we don't have enough footage of that to know exactly what's happening with that, but it feels very Hong Kong-like. And those kind of things are happening, man. And it is it's a concern. And so we need to, I'm with you. We need to make sure that the truckers have everything they need to hold out as long as needed, because what's happening right now is it's escalating. And RCMP,
you realize, of course, that were this regarding something else, America would be aiding the truckers right now. Like the federal government would be like, oh, we got to go help those protesters because they're protesting a tyrannical government. We need to support them. That's the irony of this. That's what our federal government would normally be doing right now.
Yeah, I know. It's it's
what are your thoughts on GoFundMe, man?
They suck.
I will never use them again. Organization. Burn them to the ground.
I'm with you. Like, everybody got to get the heck away from them. So we know they were helping support CHOP back in the day, or whatever, the Chaz or whatever it was called. I forget.
Were they really? Names. I don't even remember that.
So that was actually literally, because remember, like the most recent is they're saying, well, we're not going to support the Ottawa truckers because it's an occupation. But like there was actually an occupation, like it was a self-stated occupation that GoFundMe was allowing a funding stream to go through. And so that, I mean, they're hypocritical for one thing. But the fact that they actually seized the funds, it would be one thing if they just said, you know what, we're just turning everybody's money back around. We don't want to be touching this. I think that would still suck. But they're not giving the money back as well. They are now. Actually, they are. Are they now? Because I know Senator Cruz was implementing an investigation of it. So that's good to know.
What happened was they just put it out in a tweet. Hey, we're decided we're going to give it to these other charities all this money. We're not going to give it to the truckers. And so people started en masse to do chargebacks on their credit cards. And if you don't have a business, what you don't understand about that is very damaging to your business, because there are high fees when you get a chargeback.
Yeah.
And if you have more than, I want to say it's 1% chargeback, so more than 1 out of 100 charges gets charged back, you lose your merchant account. That means you no longer have the ability to accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express without the merchant account. So when all these people en masse just said, screw you, that's not what I was given to. I was given to the truckers. I'm charging this back. That really hurt GoFundMe to where they go, hey, you know what? We're just going to refund everybody's money. Not to mention all of the US politicians are like, this is illegal. This is fraud. Like, imagine if a bank had said, you know what, all this money we got here over here for Dan Sams, we no longer agree with Dan Sams. So we're going to give this over here to Planned Parenthood. We're going to give this over here to cases or causes that we do believe in. That is fraud. And you should go to jail for that.
Yeah.
Now they did the right thing fraud, because they got nailed by the public. But the reality is, I will never use that evil freaking organization. I'm done with big tech. I really cannot even stomach running Facebook ads. I don't want to give them any more money. I'm done with these a-holes who are screwing over people because we don't think like them and we don't want to think like them. Screw them. I'm done with them.
Yeah. This is the most fired up I've ever heard you, Pete.
Dude, I am so pissed at how everything has turned against us because we don't want to fall into their freaking little bubble and oh, go get me a vaccine. And look, dude, freedom, man. Do what you want to do. Do you. You want a vaccine? Go get one. You don't get one. You don't want to wear a mask? Don't wear one. I'm freaking done with this. And I think it's because I'm here in California where we are very much under a tyrannical rule. And the people here love this. I just wanted to say something else, but love this idiot, right? They love this guy and they're okay with it. And I'm like, I'm done with these people. I'm done with them. This state needs to go into the ocean. I'm done with it.
You're the first person living in California that has said that. I've heard plenty of people that didn't live there that said maybe that needs to happen.
Oh, dude, I would so love it if we had an earthquake in the whole state. I could swim like you can't believe. I will get out of here. I got no problem with that. But man, this state needs to go.
I feel you, brother. I get it, man. Well, so with you 100% on pretty much everything here, especially as it relates to GoFundMe, I would say now is a great time to be moving to other platforms. And, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of time until that platform gets corrupted. But
of course,
but even if all you do is do it now, you are letting the free market speak. And the whole credit card chargebacks, like the people spoke out and it worked with GoFundMe. And you had a golden phrase in there. I forget exactly what you said, but essentially like the people spoke out, stop this bad thing from happening. And that's what we need. I think that's one thing people are getting restless enough to do something. And I like it. The Ottawa truckers, I don't know if you're following, Australia has a similar trucking thing that they've got going on.
I did not know that.
If you're following Rebel News on Instagram, their whole thing is they're just like, they've got people on the ground interviewing, and they're saying send us as much just plain footage as you can, because you know the fake media is trying to say, well, it's not that many, it's not that much. And so they're covering both Ottawa and Australia, and they're saying send us as much video as you can, because we're corroborating the reality that there's a whole lot of people with us. And check out, I think it's Rebel News. They've got an Instagram account. The other cool things are happening because Joe Rogan is getting treated like crap. I don't know if you saw, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, the announcement from Rumble, which is like a freedom-oriented YouTube.
Yeah, and I know who they are.
Rumble offered $100 million to Joe Rogan to move to their platform.
They did not. Are you serious?
Like the statement, I'll find, you know what?
Do they even have $100 million?
That was what I wondered. I'm like, where are they getting $100 million? I'm going to bring up the statement right now because it was like they actually said it in such a way as to say, hey, we're This is not a joke. Like, oh, and I'm not going to be able to find it now.
That's crazy, man. Well, here's the thing, because we got to talk about Joe Rogan too. So
yeah, I can't find it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's talk about Joe.
Part of Rogan's apology, and I didn't watch the whole thing because I was like, honestly, they smell blood in the water and they're going after Joe. I mean, that's really what it is. They smell blood in the water. Yeah. They're going after Joe.
Yeah. And I think he should not have apologized.
I was going to ask you your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming we're talking about the original video where he breaks his silence.
No, the original video I was all in favor of. I mean, especially because he basically put the smack down and was like, look, I interviewed the cardiologist who's the most published guy in his field. Yeah. I interviewed this guy who's partially responsible for mRNA vaccines. He's got 9 patents on mRNA vaccines. So I interviewed the top, and I was just like, that shows you what an idiot you are to be like, oh, he's only putting out misinformation. No.
Well, here's what he said though. And I thought I might be talking about the second comment, and this is okay, but he tried to do the thing where you apologize, where you take like 1% of the responsibility. And I'm actually not for that anymore. Because they say that that's a technique in conflict resolution, that you apologize for something, you break the ice. And so what happens is if you're not in the wrong, the tendency is to apologize for something that wasn't really wrong. Right. And so like what he did is he said, I've had people from both sides, but I should have had them closer together so you would see the balance. And I'm like, what?
No, that wasn't the one that he's in trouble for now.
So but my whole thought is that like now you've put blood in the water because you've apologized for something that's ridiculous. Right. You've started it by saying, I'm apologizing for something. And of course, it's not really wrong, but now you've got leverage to them. And with normal people, you can do that in conflict and say, man, I could have said that nicer, man. I'm sorry. Right. But we're not dealing with normal people. My wife always says you don't negotiate with terrorists, toddlers, and crazy people. And what we're dealing with in the cancel culture is a form of terrorism that gets thrown around, but there's not a reasonability. Their whole thing is we want to scare you into obeying us, and not terrorism in the violent sense, but it's a scare. So if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And that's where I think I understand his intention. I don't think he was being a jerk, but that was on the first one. So what happened on the second one? I'm not following.
So the second one was someone put together clips of his old podcasts where he uses the N-word.
Yeah.
And he said that, and I haven't seen this video, right? I haven't seen it. And so he apologizes. He goes, look, I realize there are some people who don't think a white guy can ever say the N-word. And it was completely taken out of context. All these clips were totally taken out of context. But I get that some people don't think that a white guy can say that word.
Yeah.
And so he basically was apologizing. I've seen the video. I hate the video too, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, blood in the water now. Blood in the water. They're going to keep coming for you until you're done. And honestly, that one, I wouldn't have apologized for. Like if you knew you said it in context and you were okay with saying it in context, then you just walk away and let the video play out however it's going to play out. But at this point, he's got to stop responding. He's got to stop responding.
Yeah. Well, because they're going to keep leveraging stuff. Man, he shouldn't have done that. I think he meant well, but man, this is what people need to realize is that the rules that we used to have in dignified discourse are gone. And you just can't reason with someone who's only going to use every word against you. I mean, for crying out loud, it started with them taking him out of context. How are they not going to take out of context his apology?
Right.
Because it's all about destroying anybody who thinks freely. And yeah, well, I don't know if you know, the guy who initially made the comment about, because I know what you're talking about now about the N-word use on Joe Rogan. Apparently somebody pulled up some of that guy's books and he's got same thing where he's quoted the N-word multiple times in his books. And yeah, that's the way it goes.
I don't know. Maybe in cancel culture, you're allowed to write it, but not say it. I have no idea.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what the rules are. And see, I think that's part of the reason that none of this stuff works is you're creating rules that we don't know what they are. Like we don't understand the game that you play. Now, I would wholeheartedly agree that there is a lot of, I don't even know what the right word is, but there's a lot associated with that word. And America has a bad history with that word and everything that it entails. And so I understand, I think some people have a legitimate
sensitivity.
Sensitivity to that word. Like I can only think of my good friend and pastor, A. David, right? And you know him. And he lives in the South. And let me tell you, man, his experience as a black man in America is completely different than my experience as a white man in America. And you and I have talked about this. You had some friend who was like an elder in one of your churches, a black man, and he like got pulled over on his way to one of your meetings. And
he was like, just a friend. He was a friend in the church. Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and you were like, "Oh, did you get a ticket?" No, I never get a ticket. You never get a ticket? Oh, I've been pulled over like 16 times this year. And driving while being black. Like it is a 100%. It's a different experience for people who are not white in America. Now, I would also argue that it depends on where you're at in America, to a degree. Not that it's completely different, but I still remember some friends. It was a mixed race couple, and they're in the military, and they loved getting stationed in California because they didn't have to deal with as much crap being a mixed race couple in California. So, I mean, there are some parts of the country where it's just not like other parts of the country, right? I mean, I still think about A. David living there in the South. And I don't know if you remember this, but he was talking in our Voxer group one time about an experience he had, and I won't say with who. And he goes, she said, if I didn't leave, or if I can't remember what it was, I'm going to call the cops on you. And he goes, what that means in the black culture is I'm calling someone to kill you because cops kill black people. Like you have a different outlook on life when that's the environment you're used to, right? That's what I'm getting at here. So there is a lot of people who have a genuine sensitivity to that word for sure, and everything that comes along with it. So to err on the side of caution, I always think about my friend A. David. Do I want to hurt him with what I'm saying? And no matter how I'm saying it, no, I don't. So, and A. David he's got so much grace, man. He's the guy who'll be like, look, Pete, let me tell you what that means when you say that over here in my culture. And I'm telling you, man, that's very beneficial for me to have someone who's got that much grace to be able to like, hey, man, here's what you need to think about. So my point is that's a charged word for sure.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting because, we've got words like this where I'm of a similar persuasion where I'm like, I wouldn't use that word. I don't use that word.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever used that word. I can remember one time where I was in a discussion with somebody from that community, and we were talking about something that someone else had said, and the way that he'd said it was important. And I'm like, well, normally I would just say that he said this, and like and that's the one time in my entire life I've used that word, and it was to clarify it because I'm like, I would never use that word. And so I'm with you. There's a sensitivity, and it's similar to the whole thing with Confederate flags, where I know I know black guys that like, they're like, this is what the flag means to me. and I'm okay with that. But I also recognize that like, I never want to be caught flying that flag because of what it communicates. Right.
Right.
And so even if I understand state sovereignty and other things, it's not worth it for the harm that it causes to my brothers. Now, with that in mind, there's also a line of, in order for us to communicate, we have to acknowledge that there is going to be differences of sensitivity in things. And so like I actually was watching the show The Good Fight, which is entertaining if a little leftist.
Oh, a little leftist? Dear God.
Yeah. The and so they interesting, there's too much to get into, but there was a discussion in this fake court. It's kind of complicated, but on whether or not the use of a particular word that has that word in it, but is not etymologically associated with it, has no connection to it. But somebody got really offended. And so they're working through, but like, that's not at all what the word means. You thought it meant that, but it's totally unassociated with that. And this was in an English literature class. We actually had to use the word. And so we have a couple of times where it's like, even that word I might not use because I don't want the headache of what people are going to think that I mean by it. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to be careful where I want to be sensitive to sensitivities, but at the same time, I don't want to let the sensitivities rule to the point of becoming its own tyranny, where everybody's offended by everything and we can't say anything. And so I think we're on the same page, I think, on it, where I'm like, I would never use the N word because I would never want to cause that harm. But I also am in this place where I'm like, there's words that I know offend me that I will not go on the offensive about, because I don't want to hinder the communication. And I might say, dude, that's not cool, but I won't make a big fuss, I guess is the right thing on certain things. But that's one where I'm like, I would say to a friend, I would be like, just don't use that word, man. Dude, it's just not cool.
No, and here's the other problem too, that you kind of hit on. This is actually from a friend's Facebook and Instagram post. He took a couple of snapshots and showed the change in definition. So here's what this dictionary used to say. Racism is the belief that a particular race is superior or inferior to another, that a person's social and moral traits are predetermined by his or her inborn biological characteristic. A racial separation is a belief most of the time based on racism that different races should remain segregated and apart from one another. All right. So that's the old definition.
Yep.
The new definition is the marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on a societal constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. So apparently only white people can be racist anymore.
I heard about that change.
The problem is we are literally changing definitions. And so we are no longer able to communicate with each other on level ground. When we change the definition of a word, and my friend's point in his post, he goes, okay, but the problem is that doesn't explain the genocide in Rwanda. I mean, it's just like, it can't just be about white people committing racism. Yeah. Like that's not real.
Note the irony. The new definition of racism is arguably racist under the previous definition of racism.
Oh, completely.
Right. And here's the thing. Most of us don't just go and consult the dictionary every week, right? So a person will use the term in good faith for what it means, and truthfully, what it universally, colloquially means is the old definition, right? So we acknowledge that grammar changes. I mean, that's just a reality. Language changes over time. We know that happens naturally, is just kind of words take on new meaning. We acknowledge that. However, with something like that is absolutely an instance of a political agenda trying to move a change for a word, because we know that generally people don't use racism to mean only white people. Now we know that that's been a political movement, right? But that's been very recent, and clearly that's a move this is 1984 style. This is newspeak. This is let's change the definition of things to create more problems. And what a mess. Oh, that infuriates me, dude.
Yeah.
So not to jump back too much, but this is still related. I found the statement from Rumble to Joe Rogan, and it's today, like it's dated today. You want me to read it because it's fun?
Sure, do it.
February 7, 2022, addressed to Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience. Dear Joe, we stand with you, your guests, and your legion of fans in desire for real conversation. So we'd like to offer you 100 million reasons to make the world a better place. How about you bring all your shows to Rumble, both old and new, with no censorship for 100 million bucks over 4 years. This is our chance to save the world. And yes, this is totally legit. Sincerely, Chris Pezlowski, CEO. That
that would actually put Rumble on the map. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I know. Well, think about it. This is huge for all of us. If Joe Rogan were to do this, he really, like, I mean, he's moving millions of people over there, and you get the benefit of, because Spotify just washed out several of his old shows.
I heard it was 70. They didn't even say what it was. They just all of a sudden they're not in the catalog anymore.
So like his listeners get the benefit of, like, you can listen to anything that's been previously censored. We're going to put you on our platform. It allows this particular, Rumble is the platform for freedom right now. And it allows it to get on the map, as you say. I think everybody wins in this. And I'm totally down. I think this would be a cool thing. Now, I don't know what his contract with Spotify is.
Right. If he could even do it. Maybe they will find this as, hey, we could actually get out of our contract. That helps us with our employees. That helps us with our public image, blah, blah, blah. We've already gotten our listeners now with Spotify.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you what, about the only reason I go into Spotify is to listen to Joe Rogan. So this would be less of a headache for me.
I actually was thinking about downloading Spotify so I could listen to Joe Rogan because I don't have it.
I downloaded it purely for that. Because I use other platforms for music, and I just no reason to get on Spotify.
Right. Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Well, I wonder if there's some freedom for Rumble, because that would be video, right? Primarily.
Well, yeah, but they could still put an RSS feed out, and this podcast is right back. But I think if that happens, I think you're going to see Apple do the same thing to Rogan, what they did to Alex Jones. Yeah. And all of the platforms are just going to delist his RSS feed, which is how you get the podcast out there. Yeah. I mean, without those on-ramps, then you have to go to Rumble, right, to get it. But then they could say, you know what, Rumble, we're going to blacklist your RSS feed. I mean, big tech has way too much power over our lives.
Well, and I don't know if you listened to, my wife and I listened to the interview, Candace Owens' interview with Dr. What's the guy? The mRNA vaccine guy. That was on Joe Rogan. What's his name?
I don't know his name.
Anyway, I got to find him. Anyway, we listened to that. Dude is brilliant. Highly recommend that interview. Candace Owens is more dialogue. Candace Owens does a pretty good job. I think she talks a little bit too much. But this dude is just brilliant. And one of the things he mentioned is he specifically highlighted the disruptive, in a positive way, disruptive power of podcasting as a communication medium. He says, you're able to get out around the legacy media, communicate to your audience. It is available to anyone, and it is immensely powerful. And he even talks about, he's like, who would have thought listening to a 4-hour interview would be anything anyone would be interested in? Well, we're interested in it because we want the truth. We want information. And so we see,
and it's interesting dialogue, right? It's very, very interesting, the back and forth.
It's powerful, man. So anyway, even he was addressing the value of that, which we know then means it's going to be a target. And it was cool. I wish I could remember the dude's name.
Yeah, but to even say he's putting out misinformation when it's like he's so much smarter than you, it's like you just don't like what he's saying. Like, come to terms with it. You don't like what he's saying. Doesn't mean he's putting out misinformation.
Yeah. Dr. Malone, that was his name. Which, man, he goes into massive detail on the studies on the vaccination, information that's been covered. He cited a specific study in the early stages where a woman was paralyzed, and they listed it as her having a stomach ache. So we're talking 1 in 1,000. So it's not like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna, become paralyzed if they take the vaccine. He's like, but the issue is that they covered it up.
Right.
Like, this
I
woman
remember
was paralyzed immediately after, and rather than say what it was, they said it was something else, and that's terrible. And then he's also citing the situations where the death rate looked higher than it was. It was already really low, but it looked higher than what it was because they were testing people post-mortem. And Candace Owens brought up the situation of the drug-addicted mother who strung out, tragedy, heartbreaking, strangled her baby to death. And they did a post-mortem, PCR test. And well, they came back positive for COVID. So the baby died of COVID. And this child who was murdered brutally, they called it a COVID death. And man, just so much wickedness there and disinformation.
It's wicked. And not only that, but it's like, look at how many false positives these tests put out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, oh, well, wait a second. We get more money if we got a COVID death. So, oh, sweet. We got a positive test. Great. That's COVID.
Yeah. And that was what they talked about. It was all motivated by money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, man, you and I have been saying this almost since the beginning. Like, this is going to eventually lead to a civil war here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the way things are going, we need it. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but we need
I know
something to happen to where this tyranny is stopped.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's going to mean that America is not going to be the superpower in the world. Yeah, I think China and Russia are just licking their chops, hoping that happens. And that's not a good thing, because I think we're going to have China invade, definitely going to take over California for sure. Yeah. Russia, I mean, they're going to probably mess around with the EU and try and take over. I mean, but America's going to go away, all because our political leaders got their heads so far up their asses. There's just no turning around at this point.
Yeah, you are exactly right. Well, this is, I need to say it the right way, but I keep saying, I think civil war is virtually inevitable. Barring, seriously, a miracle from God where there was just mass repentance and we had like a third great awakening. Barring that, I think we're talking about something that's pretty much inevitable. And so as morbid
I would sounds, unfortunately, and I do say unfortunately, because while I think we need one, I don't want one. You and I have said that over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been fortunate enough in my life. I've never been to war. And everything that I know about it does not look glamorous to me. Like, we might, think it's, cool. These guys are operators and, look at no, dude, it's not glamorous. It's not glamorous at all. It's death. It's destruction. It's not pretty. I don't want that. I just don't see how we can get around it at this point.
Yeah, I know. Brother, I'm seeing the same thing. And to say how much I don't want it, I'm hoping it happens sooner than later so that my children don't have to fight in it. I want it to happen while I'm still able-bodied. And that's why I say, let's hope it happens soon, not because I want it to happen. It's the furthest thing. I don't want it to happen, but I'm seeing all the signs, and I don't want my daughter to get drafted. Right. I don't want my children to have to fight in that. Yeah. Oh, it's heartbreaking, but yeah. But this kind of leads to another part of the discussion here that's probably worth addressing, and that's we think about things going sideways in the world, whether that's China invading or Russia invading or disruption here, or whether it's even just a storm takes out a huge portion of the region, or EMP takes out whatever. We think about all these scenarios and we go immediately to stockpile food, stockpile ammo, practice that. And it's cool. You need to do that. That's important. But most people are not thinking in terms of communications, in terms of logistics, in terms of basic leadership. A lot of guys keep buying more guns. They don't train on those guns. They've got 10 ARs, but they wouldn't know who to call if things went sideways, and they don't have a community. And so one of the things I'm encouraging people, do an area study. Look at what's going on in your area. Where are the resources? Where are the vulnerable points? If there was rioting, what kind of vulnerabilities does your home and your region have? If it was something else, what does it look like? Where are the resources? If you think about the various scenarios and what infrastructure would be under attack, what infrastructure might need to go first, what would need to happen for you to preserve yourself and your community as best as possible. And with that comes a lot of logistics. And so I don't know if we even were able to mention this in great detail today, but you think about the Ottawa truckers. They're able to sustain their protest because people are taking food and fuel to them. And there's plenty of things going on to, at times, distract the RCMP. Farmers were taking food in. The RCMP was blocking them. And, they got creative to go around them. These are the kind of things, probably the number of actual operators that would be needed in a particular situation is a fraction of what's needed in people to communicate, people to move food, people to be able to who's gonna be your blacksmith, right? Who's gonna be your technical person? Who's gonna be teaching school when everything falls apart? Those things are really important. And now is a good time to just be thinking of, okay, let's just, for creativity, think if an entire society fell apart, how would we rebuild it? What would we do? What would it look like? What resources would we need? Let's plan for that. So anyway, that's my long rant on that.
Have you seen the missile silo for sale? And I believe it's either Kansas or Oklahoma.
I heard about one, and it might have been, I don't know if I don't remember where it was, but
it was only $385,000. It was awesome. They got all these pictures of it, all these levels. And I guess the owners are available for consultation because they just fixed up another silo, and that's the one they're moving into. And so they're selling this one. And I was like, dude, if I could get my wife to move there, I would so buy that freaking silo. I would move into it. I'd fix it up, man. It'd be awesome.
That's awesome.
My own underground bunker. Oh, geez, I want that so bad.
That would be so beautiful, man. Dude.
Wouldn't it?
Yes. Dude, just tell your wife to submit and just do it.
I guess that's it. I guess it was built back when they would have two teams manning the silo. So I mean, it's built with like plumbing. It's not great plumbing, right? It's not like plumbing on every level, but I'm like, dude, you fix it up. You feel like one level's got your storage of food. The next level's got your storage of ammo and weapons, another level, what can we grow indoors with artificial lighting? I'm like, oh, dude, this is awesome. I would so live here. I would so live in this thing.
That's awesome.
I know.
I love it, dude. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. But I'm encouraging. That's part of your thinking ahead. Now you're probably not going to get that, but you're thinking through where am I going to position my family for safety? What connections am I going to make? What skills am I developing? And everybody needs to be thinking about that right now. I recommend, I spent not that much money, and able to get, 25 pounds of quinoa. Like people need I was talking to one of our survivalist guys in my church, and he's like, quinoa, man, has pretty much everything you need. He's like, you could pretty well live off of just quinoa if you had to. And it's not crazy expensive. So you know what? I bought 25 pounds of quinoa and some oxygen absorbers and Mylar bags. And my plan is to start building. I could do every month, I could probably store another 30 days worth of food. So 6 months, I've got an extra 6 months of storage, and highly recommend do some stuff like that. Think through, what am I going to do if electricity goes out long term? Am I going to do a generator, or am I going to go with a root cellar and storing everything in analog manners? Just everybody, you need to be thinking about that kind of stuff. It's really, really important right now. So yeah, Pete.
Cool.
Buy that silo.
And by the way, train on your gun. I guess we are a gun podcast.
Yeah, you better be training. Yeah. And it's one obviously very important part of all this. Yeah, you better be training on it. Hey, and then the thing I'm telling people, just practice your mag changes, man. If you're not doing anything else, do ready ups and mag changes. You can do that for almost no money. And even if you only did it for 5 or 10 minutes a day, right? A couple of times a week, few times a week, you're going to be further along than most just with that. Now that's not enough, but most people are like, well, I'm not really training unless I go to the range and I blow out 500 rounds of ammo, and I can't do that. Don't think like that. Think in terms of ready ups, think in terms of mag changes, and then, get to the range when you can. But 90% of this you can do on your own without spending money.
I remember listening to this one Olympian who, I think he won for shooting a pistol. I mean, it's Olympian, so it's not like it's 22 caliber, and their guns are weird. I mean, have you ever seen them? It's like,
they're really odd.
They're really odd. But he goes, look, I did 500 dry fires a day the entire 6 months leading up. And he goes, I don't think I fired an actual round until a month before. It was all dry fire.
That is awesome.
Dry fire. So just saying, he's an Olympian, cool. And I believe he was a gold medalist. And how did he train? Not with actual bullets, dry fire.
Yeah. That's special forces guys. Guys I know that they'll say practice mag changes, practice ready ups. And they're like, and they'll tell you it's not the same as going to the range, but they would actually say the range isn't great for training. They would say you need to be in scenarios, right? You need to, and he's like, and most people are not going to get much chance to do that kind of training at all. And so they're like, practice your ready ups, hit the range a little bit, do the best you can, be as ready as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff, man. Well, this was fun, man.
Let's hear about Lake Erie.
Yeah, brothers. All right. So, I keep thinking that the last of the new AR buyers has come and gone, but I keep having people say, yep, I got to get my AR. And I'm noticing a lot of military guys that they've been issued them in the military, but they don't have their own at home when they realize I got to get my own. Or they've not been issued ARs in the military. There was M4s, but man, guys, if you need an AR, you need to get to Lake Erie Arms. You're not going to be able to beat the prices. We're going to have what you want, and we're going to probably have something better than you knew existed. So don't just go to Cabela's and get yourself, your standard basic M&P. You could come and spend about the same amount, and you could get something better that's going to serve you longer. So check out learms.net, visit the shop, and we will talk to you soon.
Cool. All right, guys, we'll be back next week with another episode. We'll talk to you then. Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the From Concealment Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.